You all right over there?
Yeah, I just got my light. We're good. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to Straight Agenda Radio. It has been a morning already for both John and I. My name is Tom Soroka, the gentleman that cannot keep his composure. To the left of me, your right, is John Ziegler. John, good morning.
Good morning.
It
Good
has
morning.
been it has been a morning. We were just talking about I had an athlete message me for a video because they couldn't find it in the exercise library. And the video I sent them was an Amazon link. I don't know how that happened. I clicked this little YouTube video. Must have been an ad or something. So that is how our morning has started. Hope yours is going better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, News and announcements. Outside of our news and announcements, the Rogue Invitational was last weekend. John, did you watch any of it?
I didn't.
Oh, well, cool. Good talk.
Yeah.
I actually do. I actually
Did
like.
you watch some of it?
I did. Mostly because of the YouTube TV ESPN ordeal. I couldn't get the
Yeah.
Notre Dame game. And
Oh.
so,
Oh,
like,
that's
long
right.
story
I forgot
short,
about
ESPN signed a thing with YouTube TV. YouTube TV doesn't make enough money, apparently. They want more money. So they pulled all the ESPN programming. And for some reason, the Notre Dame game was not on NBC like it's been for decades and centuries. And they switched it over to ESPN. So I couldn't watch the game. So I was watching the updates on my phone and I needed something else to watch because there was no college football game I cared about until later that night. So we put on the Rogue Invitational and I was watching a little bit of that. And it was like I like the Rogue.
Yeah, so do I.
It's got a different feel than most other competitions. The strongman one was fun. I like I can't I don't know if I texted you this or not, but they had a cool event. Now that's all I want to talk about, and then we'll move on to everything else. But they did a strongman WOD for the Rogue. And it was fun to watch.
I heard about this, but I don't know what the WOD was.
It
What was the
was four
WOD?
rounds for time,
Yeah.
five clean and jerks, five clean and jerks on a log. Um,
Okay.
and
That's what it was.
the men's weight was 205 pounds. I don't remember what the women's weight was. So it was five clean and jerks on the log. Then you had a 40 or 50-foot yoke carry, 600 pounds. Then you had a 300-pound loading pin that you had to duck walk 10 feet, and then you had to go upstairs.
Oh.
I believe it was a power stairs. Yes, it was a power stairs because they were talking about people dying at the bottom of the stairs and such like that. But it was a cool event. It was like I said, it was 4 rounds for
Yeah.
time. Your typicals, Danny Spiegel absolutely smashed that workout.
Of course you did.
I can't remember who won it on the guys. I want to say Medeiros won.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think
I could
Medeiros
see
won
that.
it.
Yeah, I could see that.
Um, which was surprising. I mean, Colton Mertens was kind of screwed on the power stairs because like the first stair came up to like his mid thigh. Um, but there was a workout that he absolutely smashed everybody. It involved sandbag to shoulder, dumbbell snatches, double unders, I believe, and like one other element. And he literally finished the workout. He was in like the second heat or something like that. Finished the workout and sat for 3 minutes and watched everybody else complete the workout.
Wow.
He was
I
like,
mean,
he was like, and he won the whole thing. And he was in like the first heat. I'm sorry. He was in
yeah.
like that was probably the funniest thing to watch. Is homeboy is just sitting there just waiting for everybody else in his heat to finish. Like he finished the workout in like 7, 8 minutes or something like that. And then, like I said, the second place in the workout was 10 minutes. And that was in the second.
Jesus.
Like he
That's
just
crazy.
absolutely demolished people. It was a short range of motion workout and he just crushed everybody. Uh
Well, yeah, because
so
it's only a couple inches off the floor.
I don't know. The rogue was fun to watch. The strongman was cool. Had a lot better events than years prior. Well, there was one year they did outdoors, and that was lame. But last year's events were all right. This year's events were pretty cool. So got to watch the rogue a little bit. You reminded me because I still haven't ordered it. We are in the last week of our Strength and Unity tea. I got to order some of those because, well, bad business owner not supporting my own stuff.
Mhm.
I got to order those, and then affiliate programming. You want to talk about that a little bit? What we got going coming up with the affiliate
Yeah,
program?
affiliate programming is going to launch this week, or not this week. Holy jeez.
What the?
Yeah, no, this month. This month. It'll launch this month. So affiliate programming is our take for gyms. If you need programming, it's a little bit different than what you normally see. We've got a lot of strength aspects to it, a lot of like functional hypertrophy work, a lot of just pure strength work as the accessory work and the main focus in some
Yeah.
days, and then the conditioning stuff that goes into it, the WODs, everything else. Um, but we've been running it already in some places, and they love it. We've gotten tons and tons of just positive feedback on it.
Yeah.
People are super excited about it. They love like the lifting aspects that are
Yeah.
included. They find that super challenging and hard. And then the WODs, um, as you're familiar with, Tom, they're
Yeah.
not
Yeah. I
easy.
mean, before I was injured, I ran it. I was running it solely just because I just wanted to put something on autopilot and ran it and stuff, and I liked it. Cursed
Yeah.
you out a couple times, but like it was effective. Easily,
Yeah.
it's easy to modify and scale because there's just
Mhm.
certain things I cannot do. And yeah, no, I highly recommend it. I've shared some of the Metcons in particular with other people, and they've enjoyed them. In like the sucky kind of way. There was the one,
Yeah.
the goblet squat running one. I just
Oh,
had
yeah.
I had a fellow weightlifting friend do that one. She hated it. She absolutely hated it, but she said it was good. Yeah, no, it's very good stuff. If you are involved, if you're just looking for an easy way to, because, and it was funny because I blame you for a lot of this shit, but I started listening to the Mayhem, Rich Fronings's podcast.
Yeah.
I've listened to his on and off. I like his a lot. He's one of the
Yeah. Same.
fit personalities that I feel like is real. I also love that Rich is coming into his I don't give a fuck era, and he just says what he's thinking and doesn't care because he's Rich Froning and he's won the games more times than people have ever actually been to the games. So it's just one of those. But he was talking about how the whole he was just pretty much talking about like the gym mentality on one of his episodes, and about how like some gyms just get over the top with like the programming and things, and like Mayhem is one of those affiliate things where they've got their different levels, and he
Yeah.
was like they are constantly telling people to go down to one of the lower levels, and people refuse for egos and stuff like that. And I feel like it's just with your programming and the way you have things mapped out. It's just simple. It flows.
Hmm.
And the thing I like about it is you can tweak things around. Like I know one of the squatting days you had like the pulsing goblet squats. And
Yeah.
it was supposed to be after the front squats. Well, I just started warming up front squats. They did not feel great. And so it might have been back squats, I can't remember. But so then I just took those and put that at the front, just kept the weight a little
Yeah.
bit lighter and such like that, and just used that to kind of warm up my knees and my hips. And what do you know? I felt moderately better. I felt good enough to get the squatting work done and stuff like that. And then I
Right.
hit the
Yeah.
Metcon and stuff. And it's just I like the interchangeability of it. Like you see a lot of these programs that you see out there is it's set and it needs to be followed a particular, because you're not going to get the stimulus from one to the other. And I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but just from what I know about programming and what I see, you take a goal for the day and you
Yes.
put a bunch of pieces in place that are going to help you get to the goal, but you don't need to do the pieces in a particular order. Now, obviously, you want to make sure you got a good warm up and a cool down and stuff like that. But
Correct.
that middle piece of like the primer, the main movement, the Metcon, you can kind of move them around based on how you're feeling and stuff like that. I don't recommend doing the Metcon first, but some people are psychopaths like that. But that's the thing I like
Yeah.
about your stuff is like everything that you do in there. Um, you could see the rhyme, reason, and the goal towards it, and it just make like I said, I don't feel great on some of the workouts when I'm finishing them, but like I'm also not crippling sore the next day, which allowed me to be able to come back the next day. And you and I talk about that all the time with programming, that that's how it should be. Like you should not be so
Yeah.
destroyed by a workout that you can't come back the next day and get some work done.
Yeah. And I think, with this, like I've been writing affiliate programming for a decade. It's
Yeah, I was
weird
gonna
to
say
say.
this program in particular, you've been telling me about for over a year.
Yeah. But I've been writing, for a decade, and I studied
Yeah,
specifically like this kind of programming for a long time. And then, we talked about this like as a trainer at Gold's Gym in like
yeah,
2003. So this is just kind of that culmination. And you're right. Like there's that every day has a goal, right?
yeah,
And everything is done in cycles. So I write in like
yeah.
8 week cycles or a shorter 6 week cycle or a longer, like I just finished writing a long 10-week cycle. So everything's kind of done in cycles with an idea behind it of like, this is the main focus of
Yep.
this cycle is, we're going to work on building lean muscle through tempo, or we're going to work on improving joint health and tendon strength by lots of time under tension, or higher volume movements. But every day when you walk in, there's a focus, there's a purpose, there's a reason behind the movements there. And you're right, like, don't recommend, there is a cycle where the WOD comes first to just force people
I saw
into
it.
yeah, on the strength side, to go a little bit lighter, um, and focus more on the movement itself. But for the most part, right, the strength stuff comes before the WOD, and you don't want to swap those around. But yeah, and it's geared to be done in an hour, from
Yes.
start to finish, warm up to cool down,
And
done in an hour.
I can genuinely attest that I think that's why I started doing it originally, was just because with dealing with my injury, it was the analysis by paralysis. I was just overthinking things. And like, I was like, you and I've talked about workout ADHD.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm getting to the point where I was getting to the point where like at 90 minutes in, if I am not done with what I'm doing 90 minutes in, I just stop and walk out of the gym. And then you've got that whole loathing the rest of the day of like, well, I didn't get this done or I didn't get this done. Like I wrote out this beautiful workout, but I got like three-quarters of it done. And I just needed something to put me on autopilot that was effective, that I got done in a short amount of time. And that was where your stuff came in. And I can attest, like, as long as you're not putzing around and playing on your damn phone, like you get it. Obviously, in a class setting, it's a lot different. But when you're doing it like
sure.
yourself, like I am, and which I highly recommend people doing if you're just looking for something to follow, can get it done in an hour. The other thing I liked about it is it didn't matter the gym I was in. I could
Mhm.
get the workouts done. And that was kind of the cool thing for me is like, so I have access to a couple different facilities here. Pinnacle Weightlifting, where Jackie Black is a weightlifting training center out here. Lifetime Fitness, where I work, and then I have a home gym downstairs in the basement. And between those three, it didn't matter. Like I could look at what you had written, and I could get the workout done.
Yeah, yeah. And that's kind of the key is like, you want it to be, and I just firmly believe this. So it's going to be available in two different versions. Like there's going to be a full affiliate version that includes like coaching notes and guidance and everything else. And then on the other side, there will be like the individual track kind of version, which has a little bit of extra movement in it in case you want it, some optional stuff. But it won't have the notes or anything like, or put into the affiliate
Yeah,
programming. It won't have like the information about for coaches scaling, any of that. It's just going to be, you go in and
yeah.
do the work. But yeah. So anyway, that's coming, and I think that's the end of announcement.
Cool. Cool, cool, cool. We talk about new news. And we were talking about this earlier. I made a post about it. It's kind of an announcement, kind of not, but for those who are unaware, the new weight classes.
Yeah.
And I mean, I appreciate talking about it on this podcast because I can be unfiltered and say my actual thoughts. I'm tired of the changes. I understand why
Yeah.
they occur. I'm not going to go through my whole post that I made and everything like that again. I understand the historical significance of why they change and stuff like that. But this recent one, I'm sorry, but it lacked follow through.
Mm.
'Cause I think these weight classes have been modified three times in a calendar year.
I
Um,
feel like I've seen so many notifications about weight class changes
yeah,
in the
it just,
last
I,
year.
and like I said, I understand why. Like they were redoing the like. Well, actually, that's not true because every year up until this recent change, they were changing based on drug issues. We were having issues, policing ourselves and stuff like that, lack of participation in the sport and all that. I get, but like we're doing good.
Right.
We haven't had a lot of sanctions. We weren't getting in trouble. So I don't understand why they changed the classes after Paris. Uh,
Yeah.
and then they did, and there was a lot of backlash because they brought back a lot of old classes that were problems. In particular on the men's side, that men's 94 class. Like because for those who don't know, the reason they would get rid of classes is because if they changed the classes, they reset the record books, and people who were doping were essentially eliminated from history. Fine. But back in the day, that 94 kilo class was a huge problem drug wise, and they brought it back, which means those records stand. And you can't just like, and they can say, like, oh, old records don't count, but like people know, like back in the day, it
Right.
was in the 94 class. On the women's side, it was even worse because it was the 58s, the 63s, and the 69s they brought back. It was those are three old weight classes that were also huge issues. The 58s and the 63s were the 58s in particular was a lot of like the Asian countries, the Koreas, the Chinas, and stuff like that.
Right.
They
Yeah.
had a lot of doping issues. The 63s were a little bit of that. Plus, you had throw some of the European athletes, but then the 69 athletes were a lot of like the European lifters, like the Russians, and all those, and the Kazakhs and all those guys that were getting in trouble. So it just made no sense. And so, but then the this year the IOC announced that they were upping our participation. So we're essentially, which it's great for weightlifting. We were on the verge of getting booted. Then if we were on a probationary period, they're like, you're not in LA. Then they put us in a probationary period. If we could behave in Paris, then we got in, went through the whole ordeal. So we're back. We're not going anywhere, knock on wood, but they also upped our participation. So as a result, they needed to like adjust the weight classes. And so the big one to keep an eye on the women's side is that 61 kilo class. Cause like Rachel was an athlete I had a conversation with, Jess. I've got a lot of women that were kind of in that tweener between the 50
Yeah.
and the 64s in the old weight classes, and they were like, all right, we're going to go down to the 63 because that's a little bit more comfortably where my body weight sits. And then they got rid of that class, and now it's a 61. So they got to drop 2 additional kilos, and it just puts a lot of stress on the body. Like those are tiny women in particular. And so
Yeah,
to
for
cut
sure.
2 more kilos, that's a significant percentage of their body weight. And then on the men's side, um, I'm a little grateful. They got rid of the 94, upped it to 95. I would have liked to have seen maybe 97 personally,
Mhm.
but 95 is better than 94 because I know a lot of guys that like lifted at Vegas this past year in that 110 class. They were just like, yeah, this isn't for me. And they're cutting all the way down to 94. And
Wow.
so it's one less kilo for them to have to cut. So that makes me happy, on
Sure. Yeah.
stuff like that. But like one of the things you and I were talking about, we've been talking about, one of the things that, I talked to with like Rachel, I know she's already doing it, and Jess in particular, our Jess lifter,
Hmm.
is making sure that they have a nutrition person that is
Yes.
handling this cut. And so And it's just a great time to remind everybody that we have our other Jess, who runs Strength Agenda Nutrition. She works with a handful of our athletes already. Rachel, Chris are two that come to mind. Dylan, my strongman athlete, is going to start working with her because he, refuses to get big, and likes sitting in that 125 class for strongman. So he's going to kind of work on that a little bit. But I told him flat out, like, I was like, I think Jess is going to be a much better fit for you than anybody else. So he's going to be reaching out to her. But if you don't have a nutrition person taking care of this for you, like, I'm sorry, this is just where we're getting at. And you care about, your records and your medals and your performance, because like anybody can cut weight, like cut that there is so much free information out there on the internet these days about cutting weight. You can do it. Having somebody that is managing the not only the workload for you but the
Yeah.
process for you is what's going to be the difference between you being able to successfully cut and you being able to successfully cut while putting on a good performance on the platform.
And I think that's probably the biggest thing that where I believe Nutrition Jess's probably greatest advantage comes in. It's because her nutrition coaching history
Yep.
has been with athletes that
Yep.
are trying to adjust weight but improve performance. And she's done it, obviously with weightlifters, but she's also done it with cross like high level CrossFit athletes, anybody that's really essentially looking at, hey, I'm not just here to lose weight. I need
Yeah.
to fuel my body to make improvements throughout the year, but then I also need to make sure that I'm staying within a certain weight range during that time frame. And
Yeah.
so doing that is very different. Like anybody, to your point, anybody can go cut, anybody can go lose weight. You could literally go buy a whole bunch of thermogenic pills at a friggin' vitamin store and start jamming those down your face and you're
You
going to
need a
lose
doctor to
weight.
write you a GLP-1.
Yeah. Right. And I don't have anything against that. I want people to understand like the GLP-1 stuff, I believe has a very real place in the
My
era, the
my
arena.
gauge for stuff like that is Dr. Mike Israetel.
Yeah.
Like I always will be like, what does he have to say about it? Because he's a super smart dude. He's very practical in his knowledge. And like because
Hmm.
I didn't know too much about them. You and I had joked around about Ozempic and stuff like that one
Yeah.
time. And I was like, I should probably stop joking around about this until I know more about it. And so I, went and
Yeah.
saw what he had to say, did a little research. And yeah, they're great when used appropriately. Like
Correct.
I had an
Yes.
athlete that was on it and stuff like that. My mom takes it and stuff.
My
Um,
sister takes it. Yeah.
it's just, but my mom is also diabetic, and so it's just one of
Hmm.
those situations where her doctor, the way she's got her doing it, it is like slow and low. That is her doctor's like phrase, and I fucking love that. I wish anybody working in nutrition or anything involving weight loss operated on that premise of
Hmm.
slow and low, like lowest amount of dosage, slowly building it up as needed. Like my mom is losing, weight off of just the bare
Yeah. Yeah.
dosage. And so her doctor's not gonna, like she said, she's like, there's no reason for me to push this and make you take more of it and have to spend more money. And as long
Yeah.
as doctors and physicians are doing that kind of work with it, I don't have any issue. It's the people who are taking it, both guys and girls. And this is not do not put this on women either, folks, because I know a bunch of dudes that are doing this for ridiculous, like they just
100%.
they want to look good for their vacation, so they're just like ODing on this stuff, essentially taking as much of it as they can legally, and just they can drop a ton of weight so they can go on their vacation and still eat like assholes. Like that's not what that stuff is for. Sorry, that was
Right. No,
um
no, you're okay. And I want to point out, yeah, like we used to talk about it and kind of joke around about it, but then it was the same thing. I love Dr. Mike Herschel.
yeah,
Absolutely love that dude. And despite like, that guy took shots at him because he dug up his PhD dissertation that was chock full
from
of
his
issues.
sophomore year.
Yeah. And everybody's like, "Oh, he's not a real doctor." It's like, dude, yes, he is.
Yeah,
He got his PhD. No
I know.
matter what you think when you read the
Yeah,
dissertation or how many errors you find in it, you know what you don't have? A fucking PhD.
right.
Leave the dude alone.
I
Like
just
he's
I totally ignore that entire thing because I know a lot of like personally know a lot of the RP guys. Funny enough, Dr. Mike is the only one I've never met.
really
But like Nick Shaw,
nice.
when he first
Yeah.
started RP, he was based in Charlotte, North Carolina. I happened to be a muscle driver at the time. So like
Okay.
Nick was working with a couple, like his whole RP method, he started out with a couple of the muscle driver athletes. Travis Cooper was like one of his very
Oh,
first
no way.
like
Really?
strength sport guys that he tested
Yeah.
out as that, like to help, because that was back when Travis was trying to get down from the 85 class to the 77 class. So like I know Nick. Nick is awesome. Nick is funny. And then when I lived out in Raleigh, Derek Wilcox, who was another one of their PhD, like he did his PhD studies with Dr. Mike. Like they got their PhDs from the same school or whatever. Um,
Okay. Yeah.
both speak fluent Russian and stuff like that. Like Derek's another guy. So like I know a bunch of the RP guys. So like when all of this was coming out, I was like messaging them and asking them, and they're just like, "This is the stupidest thing ever." I was like, "It is." I was like, "It's just somebody taking."
It was so dumb. It was so dumb. And it's that whole like, I can't do it. So let me find somebody to take a shot at and see if I can't like shit on them.
Yeah,
And like that culture in general is just one of the reasons I try and avoid social media and
right.
because it's just a bunch of little kids yelling at
Yeah,
each other and making fun of each other.
agreed.
But with regards to the GLP stuff,
Yeah,
really like started looking at it and then for me, I came to realize like when used appropriately, as it was meant to be used, right? The benefit to people who struggle
yeah,
so much with that aspect. And, I got to give a shout out to my sister who started using it and then made the transition,
yeah.
and the amount of confidence that it gave her and
Yep.
the, the, kind of the forward focus in terms of her health, where she was like, you know what? I think I'm going to go to the gym now. And now she's like doing CrossFit and she's lost
Yeah,
a
yeah.
boatload of weight and she's
And
just super happy with herself. And that's amazing, right?
that's what they were meant for. They were meant for essentially like a factory reset.
Yes,
And people
100%.
people don't understand that. But bringing it
No.
all back to what our original point was in terms
Yeah,
of
the weight class.
way off tangent there. Regardless
Way
of
off
what
on
your
the
goals
tangent.
are and stuff like that, you need to
Talk
have
to Jess.
you talk to Jess. You need to have somebody, especially in the strength sports realm, whether it's strongman, even Highland Games now is a really big thing with the lightweight divisions. They're starting to have more opportunities for lightweights at the masters levels, women's level, pro level, even now. Just make sure you have somebody. If your performance matters that much, if you're going to spend that much
Yes.
time in the gym, I understand it's money. I understand money is tight with a lot of people and stuff like that. But if this is that important to you, you can cut somewhere else to make sure you have somebody that is handling nutrition. Every time I had to manage a super serious cut, I always brought somebody on to do it because it's just that accountability, that the comfortability and the confidence that you're not going to just get to where you need to be weight wise, and then it's a crapshoot on performance when you know you're going to be able to perform like you did in your training leading up to the event, regardless of the cut and stuff like that. Like you need to get somebody on your team. And for us, we recommend Jess. Jess is just, she's awesome.
Yeah.
A bunch of the athletes use her already. Chris is having great results. He's having a great training block leading up to Daytona, working with her. And so I've been kind of talking to him and stuff like that. So, and I gotta send Jess a message with the next training block that Chris is going to be doing because she wants to know like his load volume and stuff.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
that was kind of the calling card for me was like she wants to know what the load management is going to be for him in the next few weeks so she can make sure she's helping him in the right ways. And I'm like, you know what? Like, here we go. So that,
Yeah. Yeah. And just the last thing for that,
yeah,
like on the financial piece, like I think we all recognize like holidays are coming up and finances and everything else. Here's what I'm going to tell you. If you're a coffee person, and I am a coffee person, right? Tom's a coffee person. But if you're the coffee person that this time of year enjoys 5 pumpkin spice lattes a week or hits up your local coffee joint and gets a latte like 4 or 5 times a week, and your performance matters to you like enough to consider it, right? And you're really looking to make those important jumps and leaps, which are going to make you more
yeah,
competitive, then guess what? Your coffee's you may give up the coffee for a little
yeah,
while, but it'll it'll pay for itself in the long run. Like find something that you're like, yeah, I can probably live without that if it matters that much to you. All right. Anyway,
yeah.
moving on.
No, absolutely. And now adding on to that, you're talking about cutting expenses. Delete your Amazon app and see how much you don't spend a month.
Oh yeah, that's
Speaking
good.
from
Wait.
experience, I go on no spending months where I delete the app because I'm like, because I just get caught perusing and I'm like, oh, I could use that. Oh, I could use that. Oh, I could use that. Next thing I know, I've spent $150 on shit that I don't need.
Right.
Anyways,
Yeah.
all right. Next thing we were talking about. So we mostly talk a lot about weightlifting and stuff like that. We talk about some of the other sports, talk about the Rogue and the Strongman and the CrossFit and things like that. We want to take a chance to talk about our Highland Games group because our off season is coming up. You got to see the off season, the first block of the off season
Yeah.
and
First
stuff
floor.
like that. So kind of wanted to take a little bit of time. I did a podcast about a week and a half ago talking about exercise selection and stuff like that. So I just kind of wanted to go over the nuances in terms of what brought upon the training for the Highland Games as a whole, similarities between all the different groups, like what you've noticed, because like I said, I feel like before you and I knew each other, Highland Games wasn't something you like you knew of it.
No.
But like
Yes.
over
Yes.
the last like few years, we've talked because you'll always ask, you're like, hey, I saw you doing this. Like, why were you doing this?
Yeah.
And
For sure.
explaining it and stuff like that. You've had the chance to kind of learn a little bit more about it, and they're a fun group of people to work with and stuff like that.
Right.
So I will try to keep this as brief as possible in terms of the background stuff like that. So we're not going too much over here on this episode. But my first love is throwing things, not humans, even though my brothers would say otherwise. But like throwing things in particular, I started throwing shot put in eighth grade through high school. Absolutely loved it. I also played football. I wrestled, did other sports and stuff like that. But throwing was always the sport that I was just like this. And I think the thing that I loved the most about it was individual. Football, my high school football team was not very good. I believe I won a total of like 8 football games my entire high school career across all 4 years. And I hated the fact that like it didn't matter how hard I tried. we could still lose. And so throwing was one of those individual things where I absolutely love the fact that I could, put as much effort into it and the result directly dictated. I think that was really what got me in the gym
Yeah.
and got me consistently in the gym was that individual aspect, that intrinsic motivation of like, if I don't do this, I'm not going to throw well. And if I don't throw well, I'm going to get beat. I don't like getting beat, so don't do this. Um, so throughout high school, went to sectionals, missed out on state, both junior and senior year. Not a big deal. Didn't have a ton of scholarships or anything like that, but that's what I ended up going to college for. Went to Aurora University. Funny story about that is literally the reason I got my scholarship to Aurora University was I almost killed the track coach's kid. It was at an indoor meet. It was at an indoor meet. The kid now is he's a GA at a school I used to coach at.
That's
Um,
funny.
but yeah, it was just the coach was there recruiting another kid. Um, and I was warming up to throw and I threw and this kid, his son just started running out into, so if anybody ever been to a track meet, the shot put sector is this big old open area,
Yeah, yeah.
just like whatever. And it was indoor. So these gigantic rubber 12-pound balls are getting just hurled out there. And I like launched one and this kid just started running out onto the open field. And like the dad saw him at the last second, grabbed the kid, pulled the kid back. I would have, this thing would have hit the kid square in the chest.
Oh,
Went up, talked to the coach to apologize. I'm like, I am so sorry. I didn't see him, blah, 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 blah. Led to me getting a scholarship. Long story short. Through there for 4 years, ended up being a three-time All-American in the shot put and the weight throw. And then one of the years I was rehabbing an injury because I hurt myself. The guy who was our head athletic trainer was like, hey, what are you doing this weekend? I was like, nothing. Probably gonna watch college football. College kid on a Saturday. He goes, all right, hey, meet me at the park in the parking lot at like 6 a.m. or something like that, 6:30, whatever. I was like, all right, cool. And he's like, I'm bringing like your throwing stuff. I was like, all right, cool. We're gonna go throw some shit. And got in the car with him, drove down to Grant Park in Chicago, and it was a Highland Games. I never had seen a Highland Games before. Never did a Highland Games. They wear kilts. They flip the telephone poles. That's what I tell people. That's how people know it. Um, Fast forward, got involved in the Highland Games, and I never looked back. And so I was able to compete at like the amateur worlds where I met Matt Vincent, a lot of those guys and stuff like that. I met them through the Highland Games, a lot of camaraderie there, a lot of guys coming over from strongman or powerlifting or track and field backgrounds and stuff. Went pro, quote unquote, in 2018. I took 4 years off for training for the Olympics for weightlifting. Stopped throwing in 2012, came back in 2016. 2018 ended up going getting on the professional circuit. I've been there ever since. And one of the things in all of my conversations was the P guys that were doing the Highland Games. It's very hobbyist. It's probably the lowest in terms of hobbyist sports if you were to rank the strength sports, right? Like I
right.
weightlifting is at the top there. There's just so much nuance and prestige and just
Right. Yeah.
stuff. Then I would put probably strongman somewhere in there. And the only reason I would put strongman, actually that's not true. I put powerlifting above that because powerlifting has their federations. They have meet format. They got rules in the meet format. Then strongman, then Highland Games. And the reason I put Highland Games down there is because yes, there's a lot of different events. We throw 9 different events, but you can go to a competition and the implement is going to look different everywhere you go. Cavers in
Mm,
particular, like the cavers are 100% specific to the region that you throw. Up in Canada, they throw really long, really whippy pine trees essentially. In the Midwest, we're throwing oaks and maples and stuff like that. Down in the Southeast, you're throwing almost like willow tree, like cypress type, like very like
mm,
thin, hot, like out on the West Coast, some freaking sort of redwood. Like it just
right.
the cavers are dependent on the area that you throw in. Same thing with the implements. Some throw a ring handle, some throw a D handle, some throw a handle that you can barely get 2 fingers in. Like it just depends like place to place. And so in all my conversations and such, I was noticing that people didn't know how to train. Like they just and like me with a track and field background, I literally was just following what we did for track. We had your off
Right. Sure. Yeah.
season, preseason, you had your in-season work. And so I started helping out a couple of guys that were on the pro circuit with me, and they were like, oh yeah, like this makes a lot of sense. And I was coaching weightlifting at the time. Like that was I just had weightlifters, and I was just like, you know what? Like Matt Vincent put out like a training manual and it did really well and stuff like that. And this was about, almost 10 years after he did that. And I was like, I think I can kind of revamp this a little bit and just create an all-encompassing, like, these are the things that I learned. So that's how the manual came to be. This is the third iteration of the manual. And it's hands down the best one yet. And so it's just one of those situations where we just got into, I started bringing on athletes and things like that. And we've been able to take athletes from like hardly knowing how to operate in a weight room to, being promoted to the A divisions. Because in competitions, there's A, B, and C classes, and you have to do certain numbers to get promoted up through the ranks.
Okay.
So it's just been one of those situations where it's been a real fun ride in terms of bringing a system that you and I are accustomed to, with
Right.
our
Yeah.
background, with your Gold's Gym background, with the weightlifting and all that stuff to a sport like the Highland Games. And I think it has kind of helped create this, alongside Matt Vincent, alongside Carrie Overfelt, who's another really great coach. Ryan Stewart is another awesome coach. Like we've been able to kind of just expand the knowledge base in terms of training systems for these athletes and such. And so it's been a lot of fun. But like our group, we're kind of talking about how to set up that training and stuff like that. And so I just kind of wanted to ask you, like, what were some of the things you noticed in that first block? Because we were actually on the phone talking about it when you were showing me how to put it in the app, and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So what are the things that like that came to mind for you from like, and I'm always interested with like outsiders' point of views on these sorts of things.
Sure. Yeah. I think, the thing that was interesting for me is that first block, looking at like kind of that first week. I don't know what I expected to see,
Yeah,
right? But it wasn't what I wound up seeing.
yeah,
Um, because I guess I expected it to be with kind of the power output requirements, right? The
yeah,
coordination, everything else. I think I expected to see something more along the lines of weightlifting or maybe powerlifting or something, akin to that.
yeah,
And what I saw was, the multiple 5 minute AMRAPs
yeah,
where it was super low volume, right?
yeah,
For 5 minutes, but on repeat. So it wasn't like, oh, you're gonna do a 5 minute AMRAP. I think one of them was like a 5 minute AMRAP of a bench. And, to
oh,
your right.
yeah,
So you're just doing that for 5 minutes and then you
yeah,
rest 3 minutes and then it's another 5 minute AMRAP of bench press. And then, that repeated like three times. And
yeah,
I was like, what I finally started to realize was like the accumulation,
yeah,
right, of fatigue with the rest in between,
yeah,
right? I was like, oh, I get it. Like
yeah,
like it stays low. It's not, I think one of
yeah,
them's like bench press at 50%,
yeah, yeah,
right? And I'm like, okay, bench press at 50% for 5 minutes. Like that's gonna start to kind of suck, but it's not bad. It's 50%. And
right,
then 3 minute rest. And I was like, oh, you're gonna repeat it. Okay, now that's really gonna suck.
yeah,
And then 3 minutes, and then you're doing it again. And I was like, okay, this is gonna get hard. And then there's the accessory stuff, right? It really
yeah,
made me think about how intentional it is.
yeah,
Despite looking, I think, to an outsider, if somebody just like doesn't, to your point, doesn't understand off season,
right,
doesn't understand in season, doesn't
yeah,
understand, preseason training, they'd look at it and be like, well, this isn't going to do anything for me.
yeah,
But when you step back from like kind of that coaching programming mindset of like, okay, you're stepping into the off season,
yeah,
my immediate thought was, what is this going to look like for people
yeah,
in 3 months? And the accumulation of that power output
right,
underneath that time domain, what is that going to do for them in terms of the necessary? And this is my lack of true understanding of what's required to compete in Highland Games,
yeah, yeah,
other than, just the conversation that we've had and watching. But I started to realize, well, if you're doing this kind of work under bench press under those time domains,
yeah,
right, you're building up the stamina, I would imagine, to
yeah,
be able to carry that caber and
yeah,
keep it steady to be able to actually
yeah,
throw it. And
yeah,
so that accumulation, it's it's going to get heavier, it's going to get harder as time goes on. And by the time you get there, the amount of stamina,
yeah,
just raw power stamina,
yeah,
I think
yeah,
people don't realize the value in that.
yeah,
right? In anything really that you do, I started thinking about it in terms of, whether you're looking at CrossFit or weightlifting,
Yeah.
even just being able to, like, for weightlifting, my immediate thought was, wow, if you did something like this for somebody that had a poor overhead strength and stability issue,
Yeah.
how much would it improve that? Because they've
Mhm.
just developed that level of like, I'm locked out, I'm solid, I'm
Yeah.
good. I can sit here for a while because I've done a million AMRAPs of just
Yeah.
this one rep over and over and over again. And so I started to understand and see the thought process behind it. Like it started to make sense. And it wasn't just the initial look of, well, it's only, 5 minute AMRAP of bench press at 50%. It's like, no, it's three. And then the
Yeah.
next day we're going to do another movement. And all of the everything that was done throughout the 4 days of training for that first block,
Yeah.
to me, I was like, oh, oh,
Yeah.
I get it. I can
Yeah.
see the thought process.
And that's exactly it. Like a lot of people, like a lot of people look at like an individual Highland Games event, and you hit the nail on the head. Stamina is like it's stamina plus the power output, being able to repeatedly put out that power. Because a Highland Games event itself is so like for those who don't know, there's 9 events, and you're pretty much throwing all day long. You get about like 2 or 3 warm-up throws, and then you get your 3 competition throws, and then you're resting for anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes before you move on to the next event and so on and so forth. And you do that, like I said, for 9 events throughout an entire day. That in and of itself is one of those situations where it's like you're trying to that's one of those situations where like you're trying to, not only be at your best for each of those events, but you're trying to make sure that you're, on you're on your A game for by the end of the day as well. So you need that stamina
Yeah.
not only for like each individual event, but you need it throughout the entire day. Then you take the Highland Games season and you extrapolate it out even more. People are throwing anywhere from like 6 or 7 times to like 20 times a year. Like out in the Southeast right now, like their Highland Game season pretty much goes from February to October. And so, and
Wow.
you're doing anywhere from like 1 to 2 games a month, sometimes up to 3 games a month. And so you've got to be able to have that repeated effort. And so that was 100% the base of the off-season work is like, how can without throwing, because in the Midwest, like you guys can't throw in the wintertime.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like in the Midwest, how can we create a system that replicates the energy systems that you're going to be needing to use? And so that's where that what you're talking about, that's escalated density training, is the official name of it. I got it from Cal Dietz, who's up at University of Minnesota, and just kind of modified it a little bit for what like throwing specific stuff, including the power snatching, the benching, the jumping, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's one, and yeah, I really appreciate that you noticed that because that's exactly the goal. It's just like we're trying to build that capacity to be able to repeat that effort over and over and over and over and over again. And like when you think about it in the grand scheme of things, like we throw a 28-pound weight, right? Percentage of body weight, that is not going to be very, hard on the body, but it's enough that if your timing and your positions and all that stuff is off, which that is something you have to work on in and of itself. But
Yeah.
if you haven't trained your body how to put that effort into the throw itself, like you're not going to be able to just all of a sudden create it on game day. And that's where the training comes in. And then, like you said, each block builds off itself. So that first block is that escalated density training. And then from there, we kind of go into a modified 5-3-1, but it's still,
Yeah.
on time domains, and we're still working on repetitions and stuff like that. And then once we transition into the preseason work, transitions more into that max effort, more of a conjugate style, whether it's, the snatching or the pulling or the pressing or the squatting, where we do our dynamic effort work with like band accommodating resistance stuff on a timer, working on velocity, which is a whole other aspect that people like really struggle with. We kind of talk about that at a later podcast. We're not going to talk about that today. We're talking about just the off-season stuff. But just wanted to give people a snippet, like, and then that max effort work where you're just like completely pushing yourself to the limit. And then, from there, we transition into contrast training, which is like, you'll do a heavy lift, like let's say you'll do, I don't know, like a heavy back squat with a pause on the bottom, and then you'll do a seated box jump, just like heavy, light contrast, just to kind of get your body primed and ready to go. And then during the season, once we start that, it is strictly velocity based work where it's just like you are focusing on the output and being able to repeatedly put out that output and listen to your body and understand. And what that does is it allows you at a competition, like, I always joke around with the Highland Games. Everybody always thinks of it as like a flip switch where you're on, you're off. I think of it as a dimmer switch because like you're not going to be at your 100% best every games, but you need to know what your baseline is and how to be able to maintain that baseline because the chances
Yeah.
are if you can maintain that baseline for a majority of your competitions throughout the season, you're going to be good to go and you're going to be, placing well and you're going to be doing well. And that is really in the off season where it all starts and what we're trying to build and what we're trying to get to.
And it's interesting. A couple of things. One, you're talking a lot about recoverability,
Yeah.
right? Stamina includes that aspect of recoverability that I think a lot of athletes miss is in between, right? How fast can your body recover
Yeah.
and get you back to your baseline? So if you know, right, you can function at
Yeah.
like 80%. You're like, let's say you're just good at 80%, max effort kind of all the time. In an event, if you're able to do 80% max effort, right? And then to your point, a few minutes later, you got another throwing event,
Yeah.
and you're able in that short amount of time to recover enough to come back up to close to, if not at that 80%.
Yeah.
Like that energy system development is super
100%.
critical. And
Yeah.
then
That's
the other thing that I wanted to point out is that, you talked about how much throwing you're doing. And this is one of those things that like and obviously we're both baseball fans, and both of us have poor taste in teams at times. But
100%.
as you think about somebody that's pitching and
Mm-hmm.
the sheer number
Yes.
of pitches that they have to throw,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
right?
Yep. Yep.
And I feel like the guys who have the longest careers are the ones that are implementing like not only the velocity training, not only, all of that stuff that you were just talking about, but also the often overlooked piece of the accessory work
Yes.
to protect the shoulder, to protect your joints, to protect
Yeah.
your tendons. I was having this conversation with somebody in the gym last night sorry if the long guys are here, so if it picks that up in the background, I apologize. But
Right.
I was talking to somebody about this last night. It's like those accessory pieces, right,
Mm-hmm.
increase the longevity of your ability to be able to do things
100%.
because that's how you're bulletproofing your body. And I feel like that was one of the things that I noticed, right? And I appreciate it about your programming, but it really stood out in the Highland Games stuff. Is like you've got 3 5-minute AMRAPs, and then we've got a couple accessory pieces at the end
Yeah.
that would seemingly be super simple and almost
Yeah.
like understated compared to what they did prior to.
Yeah.
Uh, hold on, this just got really loud. The dude with the lawnmower is like sitting outside the window of the room that I'm recording.
That's how it always goes. Like
Yeah,
when I first come in, like I don't Fridays our garbage gets picked up and people like you never see the guys, but literally as soon as I come in here to start recording, all of a sudden the garbage truck shows up right
right.
outside.
Everything just starts going. But
Anyways,
I appreciate them doing the lot. But anyway, so that you can tell in sports where there is a lot of
yeah,
almost like overuse on something. So back to the baseball thing, guys pitching on the mound that are throwing 100 pitches a game,
no,
if they're not doing the accessory work,
nope,
those guys are going to suffer from shoulder injuries. Some of them are going to end up with like Tommy John surgery early
no,
on in their career because they've thrown too much and all they focused on was throwing form. They focused on velocity. They
yeah,
focused on like, angle of the pitch. And what they didn't do was go in and do just stupid, simple,
yeah,
seemingly like you're just like, why would I
unassuming,
do this?
yeah,
Yeah, unassuming. And you're like, the guy next to you's doing it. And you're like, I don't understand why that guy can throw 120 pitches every time he goes out. and come back and like 3 days later do it again and have the same velocity and same
Yep.
control.
Yep.
It's because of those things. And when you talked about Highland Games and the sheer amount of throwing, like the the attention to that detail in the off-season programming, I was like, not
Yeah.
immediately, I was like,
The-
all of Tom's athletes are going to have longer careers.
So fun fact about that is two things is s- um you mentioned baseball. Where I got all my accessory stuff from, or how I got, let me just not rephrase it, because like the accessory work is accessory work, but what I got the protocol on how to implement it was from a guy named Eric Cressy. He's online as a Cressy Sports Performance, big baseball guy. I think he's with the New York Yankees right now in their strength and conditioning staff. And then my buddy Ben Chantos, B3 Performance in Lombard. They both are, well, they work with the baseball players primarily. And Ben is somebody who has utilized the conjugate method in relation to his baseball players and has just constantly producing D1 talents, independent league guys, and all this stuff. And so I literally just started talking to them in terms of how to implement the accessories to keep the shoulders, knees, and hips happy. And that is literally how I came with the up with the system. So like my throwers are training like baseball players essentially when it comes to injury prevention. Not like in terms of like I'm not training them to be able to hit a baseball or throw a baseball mile, 100 miles an hour. But I'm training them in terms of the repeatability and the longevity that these guys are having success with their baseball athletes and stuff like that. And that's it's funny you mentioned that because that's exactly how I put the protocol together in terms of when I implement what in their off-season work. And so for anybody listening to this, like when we're talking about like our Highland Games and our off-season work, like the entire goal is to put you in a position to not feel like crap in the middle of the season. And my athletes will tell you the ones who slack during the off season, the ones who don't do everything that is written and stuff like that. And like I said, the workouts, like I said, I try not to make them too long. The escalated density stuff you can get done in about an hour with accessories, with your warm up and stuff like that. But the athletes who do the work have significantly less bumps and bruises throughout the season versus the athletes that don't. And so it's just like I said, it just made me smile when you were talking about baseball. Cause I'm like, that's literally how I put in their that's how I protocol their accessory work throughout the off season. It is 100% basing it off of what my colleagues in the baseball world did to keep pitchers and catchers in particular too healthy throughout the year because catchers have a lot of load,
Yeah,
especially on the knees and the hips and stuff.
for
So
sure.
yeah, it's just one of those situations where like if you're looking for a off-season plan that takes all these things into consideration, it's no nonsense. You saw it, there's nothing fancy with the off-season work. It's not flashy, it's just sound foundational stuff that is going to get you ready for the rest of the season and stuff like that. And it builds upon like because the other thing too is I have people that'll buy the manual and they will jump to different sections. They won't do the off season. And then they'll come say like, hey, like this just didn't feel right, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, it's because you needed the foundational stuff to
Yeah,
it builds right on top of it. Like, yes, you can take the different parts and you can implement them and stuff like that, and you're gonna have success. Like my programs work. I know this already, but it's the all the pieces put together that's going to work in terms of like the off season and stuff like that. So like if you're looking for just a sound foundational approach to your off-season training for the Highland Games, either get the manual or get with me. The difference between the manual and me is essentially we do once a month check-ins and stuff like that. You have video reviews, so we're cleaning up your technique and stuff. And then if you need adjustments of exercises, I can get those to you. The manual has some of that in there, but it's just you don't you get what went off in my brain, but you don't get the constant adjustment and feedback and
yeah,
accountability from working with me. So both options are going to get you success. I've got a guy that I talk to on a regular basis. Bill Baxter, we posted about him on the social media. He,
yeah,
took top 10 at the World Championships for Masters for the first time this year. He literally has been following the manual for the last 2 years. He doesn't work with me or anything like that. He just follows the manual. He'll shoot me a message in the group chat saying like, "Hey, where do you recommend I start for, X, Y, and Z?" And I'll say, "Hey, start at this point or whatever." I'll give him some pointers and some advice, but I
sure,
won't
yeah,
coach him. He just follows the manual, and the manual works just fine for him.
yeah. And I think that the manual is super popular. I just want and honestly, I would say this to anybody in any other like I guess whether it's strength sport or anything else that's looking for something different to do accessory wise that will provide them with a program that essentially is going to, one, help bulletproof like shoulders, hips,
Yeah,
knees against a high amount of volume and explosive power, while at the same time developing stamina in a very different way that
yeah.
you'd like to find. Like, grab the manual. Like, grab the manual. Like, just because it says Highland Games and it's geared specifically towards those people. If you're like, I need some strength, I need some stamina, and I'm feeling a little beat up in my hips and knees, like I'd like to be able to kind of do some work to bulletproof those and
Yeah.
make those better. Like the training program can be utilized just for that.
The funny part about this is I was going to tell you about this is like you probably have seen it, or once you look at it, you probably have seen it. But the basic strength program that I use for the weightlifters is the last 8 weeks of the off season for the Highland Games. Like it all like molds together and it all like because like my weightlifters, surprise, surprise, I use the same accessory work protocols for you guys as well. To keep your shoulders, knees, and hips happy. Um, but like you'll see it when you look at it. I don't know if you've gotten that far in like looking through this stuff yet, but the last 8 weeks of the Highland Games off-season work is the basic strength template that I have for like the only thing that changes is the Olympic lifting work because my Highland Games guys very basic with the Olympic work. Everything's from the hip or it's a muscle variation. Like they're really a lot of them don't know how to pull from the floor. I allow them to if they know how to,
Sure,
but
yeah.
from the hip or a muscle variation. My weightlifters will do more specific hang or block work and stuff like that during the basic strength phase. But yeah, like the protocol in terms of the strength work and the accessory work and everything is almost identical. And it's not, yeah, and I know like I've had some people in the past be like, well, that's lazy programming. It's like, no, it just it works. So there's no
Yeah.
reason to reinvent the wheel. And it's meant as a reset. Like that basic strength program is something that I want my Highland Games or not my Highland Games, my weightlifters doing after a competition as a kind of a reset to lay down a strength foundation before we start pushing for the next event. Same thing with the Highland Games athletes. So why wouldn't I have them do similar programs if the desired result is the same? So,
Yeah.
but we'll go ahead and get it all wrapped up here. There was a lot of talking about stuff. Long story short, obviously, get the manual if money is tight. I 100% understand that. I personally like I am slightly biased, but like I don't think you're going to find a better resource for the Highland Games. We talk about the throwing, we talk about some cueing and stuff like that in terms of how to set up your practices for throwing. It gives you an entire season of training with all the workouts. That's probably the bulk of the manual.
Yeah.
Is the manual has from your off-season workout all the way to your in-season workouts. It has like it has 52 weeks of workouts. Actually, I think 56 because I can't count. But it's got like that much work in there for you, and it explains in detail how we want everything to look. Like I spent about 6 months writing that. I have dyslexia. I have ADHD. So for me to sit down and put that together, like it was a labor of love, but it was something that I felt needed to be done and the community deserved. I was actually looking through push press over the course of since I first launched it 2 years ago, and between push press and then what we've got going in the train, the train at the Strength Agenda app, we've sold over 100 copies of it, in like 2.5, 3 years, which I am very proud of. So it's just one of those, like, I appreciate everybody who has gotten a copy of the manual. I encourage people that if you're looking for something that is a low, barrier of entry in terms of cost to getting your training sorted, go ahead and get one. And then if you have, the ability or you want just a little bit more, reach out to me for the remote coaching. I take care of you guys just like I do my athletes and stuff like that. Do you have anything you want to add on that before we sign off?
No, I think that's good.
Cool, cool. Appreciate y'all as always for the subscribing to the app. We're seeing all your feedback and stuff like that. We're going to start adding more stuff onto there momentarily here. This is going to be the last, you said week or month for the Unity
Week.
last
Week.
week for the Strength and Unity tee. Please make sure you go ahead and get those before those are pulled off there, and we replace it with the Tats and Lats shirt. And then yeah, just keep coming in with the comments and stuff like that. Any questions, things like that you want us to talk about? Probably we should do another questions episode here on the next one.
Yeah, I
Um,
think we're due.
so good deal. Appreciate you guys. I'm Tom Soroka. That is John. See you guys later.
Bye, guys.